Good morning, everyone. Welcome to At Home Art Class. Today I've labeled it Messy Monday because we're going to do something that is a little bit messy. We're not at school, we don't have all those wonderful art supplies that we normally have to work with, so we have to substitute things, and I'm making these lessons for specifically at home with at-home materials. So we're going to make art dough or salt dough, whatever you want to call it. And this is the recipe. Let me see my camera here. So we have in my bowl here, I have 4 cups flour, 1 cup salt, and in a minute I'm going to add 1 3/4 cups warm water. So I'm going to set this aside, and because I'm working with a video, I am going to use gloves because I'm not going to finish mixing the dough on camera, but I want to show you what it looks like and what to expect when you're mixing. So first of all, this is the salt and flour. I've got to blend those two together. I feel like I'm a cooking show now. And after I have that, then I take my 1 3/4 cup water. I'm going to set that aside. And then I start to mix. And when you start to blend it, it's going to be sticky. But once you get it, all the liquid blended into the flour mixture, it'll all come out like a dough. So I want to show you, you see, it gets really sticky at first, but you're okay. Just keep going, keep mixing, because you're going to see there's a lot of flour still sitting on the bottom. And my gloves are getting pulled off by the dough. So if you've ever cooked in the kitchen with your mom or whomever at home, and you've made pie crust, or you've watched someone make pie crust, this is very similar to that, where you have to keep blending things together. So this is starting to come along. Now at this point, I would take it out of the bowl and make sure I have the rest of this. And it's called kneading the dough. So you would do that out on the counter to make sure it's all blended. I'm not going to do that because of the camera. So I'm going to take this off and set it aside. And, oops. And I'm going to show you, this is the bag that I made. And I keep it in a Ziploc bag because it stays pretty well in there. And when you're ready to use it, you can see that it's really like a nice clay. So what are you going to do with this? Now you're going to need a baggie for whatever you make. You want to let it set on the baggie to dry. I'm going to put the recipe here again. So there's a couple ways to have this dry. One is to air dry. That's my preferred way, after you've created something, of course. But they also give instructions on putting it into the oven at 300 degrees. The thing I don't like about that method is that you're putting flour into the oven, and I have had things kind of rise up a little bit. So that's why I like the air dry method. So what can you make with this? Well, like all art activities, this is where your creativity comes in. You can make anything. You have to kind of experiment and explore on your own. Because I notice that when I do something, when I make something, then everybody makes that something. So I prefer to have you figure it all out and what you can make. But with that being said, I do want to show you a couple things that you can do. So I'm going to hold it up. It's sitting on a baggie. So I was thinking Easter, and I started to make this Easter basket. And you're going to notice I have this little piece of foil in there. That's because the art dough clay is kind of flimsy. It will kind of collapse down. So that's just a support to keep it up as it dries. The other thing you can do, which is really fun, and I did this with, actually I did it with Patty Hill teachers one year. They come to the art room and they make ornaments, and you can press stamps into the dough. You can have a cookie cutter cut it out. Let me just show you how that works. So I'm going to take some clay. I'm going to roll it into a ball. And because I don't have a cookie cutter, I'm just going to flatten it out with my hand, something roundish. Okay. Now I have stamps, and I've pressed my stamp into some ink. Now this is also going to require you to experiment. You're going to discover pretty quickly that if you press too hard, it's going to come through the other side and get all stuck in your stamp. If you press too lightly, it's not going to show up enough. So what I did for this one in particular is I flattened out some clay, and I let it sit for about 10 minutes or so. And that lets some of the moisture begin to evaporate and lets the clay dry a bit. So that imprint came out really good. Now, when it's all dry, I can paint this. But what I just did is, you can see this is pretty wet still, wet clay, and I used a stamp into it, and it kind of deformed my shape, but that's okay. So let's see what happens here. I've got my stamp, I've put a little ink on it, and I'm just going to press that in. I'm going to start just gently, and even gently on this dough when it's still pretty fresh. You have to be careful. All right, but that came out really good. You could poke a hole in there with a pencil, and you can make a whole bunch of ornaments for next Christmas, or you could make Easter egg ornaments for this crazy Easter tree you'll make. Who knows? I'm just giving out ideas. Now the last thing is I created a little animal, and it's hard to see, but here's my dog. And so there's millions of things that you can make. I want you to use your creativity, come up with a whole bunch of things. Of course, later when this dries, you will be set to paint it any way you like. And if you have glitter, ooh, that would make it even more fancy. But have fun and get in the kitchen and mix up some art dough. See you later.